Are the Nameless Ghouls summon spirits? If you followed the band Ghost closely, you'll know the performers on stage are called Nameless Ghouls. The band has been fronted by a string of satanic popes, Papa Emeritus I, II and III, Papa Neil, as well as a Cardinal Copia, who as of late was anointed Papa Emeritus IV, each donned in skull makeup and papal regalia. What was the reason for obscuring their identities? Is there something supernatural about Ghost, or is there something more sinister going on here? And more importantly, are the Nameless Ghouls of Ghost simply masked musicians or spirits summoned by Tobias Forge? Well, we can answer these questions by looking at the bases. The band, formerly known as Ghost BC, made no bones about it. They hide their identities through the use of obfuscation, denial, and misdirection. It was only when frontman Tobias Forge was forced out of the shadows and into the light did he reveal he was purposely avoiding any attention at all. Why is this? What was he trying to hide? Tobias Forge was known for taking trips to a sci-fi bookstore in Stockholm, where Forge purchased a copy of the dubious black magic grimoire, the Necronomicon. According to the author H.P. Lovecraft, it's a tome filled with secrets and rituals that can drive a reader to the brink of insanity, and possess the means to summon spirits of the dead. Keep this in mind, as we'll return to it later. Forge also admits to running into the arms of the devil and becoming a Satanist after punishing experiences with devout Christians as an adolescent. Classical witchcraft has had strong ties to Satanism since the 15th century, with evidence of black magic rituals present in their practices, and as a result were historically classed as an act of Satanism by the Catholic Church. It is the belief of this author that a resentful Forge used the black magic of Lovecraft and Satanism to summon spirits to help do his bidding. In this case, forging a rock band in his own image, which in turn created the current incarnation of Ghost and their discography as we know it today. The first apparition of Ghost appears online in March 2010. Soon followed by the first performance on October 23rd of the same year. The band don in black cowls and robes, covering their faces with masks, assuming their place from a nameless spirit to a nameless ghoul. They are instead identified by one of the 5 classical elements: ether, sometimes called spirit, air, earth, fire, and the bass player, water. Water is seen on stage ironically using an Ibanez Iceman, a fitting choice for a water elemental. This was commonly powered by Ampeg SVT4 Pros and 2 Ampeg 8x10 cabinets. It is important to note these 5 elements correspond to the 5 points of a pentagram, a commonly used symbol within witchcraft and Satanism when inverted. Front and centre is a papal figure, presented in a similar fashion of all black and skeletal masking of his face, Papa Emeritus I. Most striking about his appearance is the addition of an inverted crucifix upon his mitre. The symbol has become a crucifix. By 2011, Water had changed base to a white Fender Precision with a black pickguard. Behind the ghoul was an Ampeg 8x10 with an SVT V4B. This bass was also seen in 2012 when the ghouls wore all white robes. That summer, the Precision was swapped out for a Fender Deluxe Jaguar bass with a white pickguard and Perleoid block inlays. The amplifiers then changed to PV 8x10 and Ampeg SVT8. By mid-2011, an orange AD300 with matching 4x10 cabs would be Water's primary choice. Ghost as a whole would predominantly use orange amplifiers throughout festivals in 2012. On occasion, Ampeg SVTs return, either in full or a mixture of orange equipment. From 2013 onwards, Ghost had reached a point where their gear was no longer on stage with them. The Ghouls have always spoken highly of orange, and it is the author's belief that the ensemble continued to use them behind the curtains. Waters' bass guitars, however, are still up for scrutiny. The white Fender Precision returns to the forefront for the next few years, but on occasion you'll find a black Precision in its place. In the summer of 2016, there are a handful of shows where Water, our bass player element, is missing completely, as in not playing on stage. A few weeks later, Water returns to Ghost, still with the same old white Precision, but taking on a striking new appearance. Water seems to have shrunk compared to the other ghouls, and now appears in a more feminine demeanor form. During the performances of Ghoulair and Mummy Dust, however, our new Water Ghoul now uses a Fender Jazz bass, but fitted with 2 split coil humbuckers. If you, dear viewer, have tried to play Mummy Dust, you would be aware the song is played in drop C tuning. It is believed this bass is used to accommodate this. Water would briefly disappear for a few shows again in 2017, leaving the fellow ghouls without a bass player. Soon after, Water returns to the status quo, and this arrangement of basses would continue until 2018. Following the release of Prequel, a new standard Fender Jaguar in white with a black pickguard emerged, which took over the main duties for Water all the way into 2019. The drop C tuning used on Ghoulair and Mummy Dust was at this point a white Fender Jazz. Not long after this, it became the main touring bass, and was seen towards the end of the Prequel tour cycle. At the start of the video, it was put forth, magic that is black could be at play. Tobias Forge stated in an interview, as a young teen, Satan and the idea of some sort of world that you could be in touch with that could empower you was very much the symbol for freedom. In a similar interview, he also claimed, when adolescence was knocking, there are another set of emotions that come into play, and the idea of the devil and the idea of dark powers from beyond that continue in any way or form is a very interesting thought for a 12-year-old who is also a big worshipper of rock music. It's no secret, Forge is a big fan of music from this era and praises the likes of Kiss, Motley Crue, and Alice Cooper. Coincidentally, during the research for this video, many sites and articles comment on the fact Ghost sound like a band from the 70s. In an interview with Vice, a Nameless Ghoul admits the idea with Ghost was to pretend it was 1976 and that metal didn't really exist. And again, in an interview with the Rolling Stone, we sort of came out with this mixture where we could combine basically all our favourite music styles. And we grew up listening to a lot of 60s and 70s bands. With this in mind, the evidence before us suggests that Tobias Forge summoned and willed these spirits into existence to fulfill his own musical desires. When sung from Forge's own perspective, the song, aptly titled Spirit from Meliora, could possess the tellings of the ghoul's origins. Throw yourself into the smoke of possibilities. There's no return from this excursion of possibilities. You're at the center of fate. The evidence becomes apparent. Tobias Forge, a self-proclaimed Satanist, member of the Swedish Freemasons, and reader of the Necronomicon, created a ritual, a black mass, to summon entities unto his bidding. One of the ghouls echoes this in an interview with the Rolling Stone. We wish to simulate at our shows to the point where it's real. It is a mass. An article from the Alt Press also goes as far as saying, Ghosts have created something so special you would almost think they struck a deal with the devil. The summoning of the ghouls brings with it more questions. Where is Tobias Forge when the ghouls are performing? This author can present to you 2 theories for your consideration. The first being, Forge embodies the papal frontman Papa Emeritus, whether through demonic possession or an actual transmutation of a mortal Forge into a demonic Papa. In the Bible, Genesis 6, we learn demonic possession is possible through the tale of the sons of God. They were essentially spiritual beings, a la angels, kicked out of heaven for rebelling against the good of God. These angels copulated with mortal women, whose offspring would be named the Nephilim. In this story, the Nephilim are portrayed as giants and half-human, half-rebel gods, held captive to a spiritual evil in a Catholic sense. As a result, the Catholic Church declared anyone who is possessed, id est a rebel, as evil. Thus, demonic possessions are possible within this theology. The second theory flips the first on its head. What if Tobias Forge is a pawn in the clergy's plan? One of the ghouls jokes about unmasking, only to admit that they thought about putting a decoy figure there in place. Could he be talking about Tobias Forge? The interviewer asks, do you ever contemplate unmasking yourselves, or even going the other way and coming good on your idea to unmask Paul McCartney as Papa when you play Here Comes the Sun? The Nameless Ghoul replies, in the sense of putting someone else underneath the mask and unveiling that person, yes, we've thought of that. Obviously that's funny, and that's the nature of what we're doing. In this sense, it would seem the Clergy et al. Have been in control all along, and Tobias Forge is the diversion. The question then stands, who are the Clergy, and where did they come from? The music videos Ghost have released provide us with a lot of information that have been overlooked. All have a striking theme of being presented and or recorded in a different time era. The 70s is a key theme for Ghost, and it crops up several times. Secular Haze is a prime example. It is presented as filmed on a television studio set from the 1970s. A ghoul even explains how this was accomplished. We literally went to an old TV studio with an old reel camera from that age and did all those sorts of moods. So it was as authentic as it could be in order to make it look like a 1971 TV show. The aesthetic does look authentic, and that's because it was shot in 1971. Cerise and He Is both share the same type of hazy framing, lens flares and overlays typical from the same period. The narrative of Cerise takes influence from the film adaptation of 1976's Carrie, while He Is flashes the audience with this hidden photograph. The man in the picture is Tony Alamo, who formed the cultish Alamo Christian Foundation in 1969, giving a possible clue to its time period. From the Pinnacle to the Pit and Square Hammer both share the same themes and are set in a futuristic 1920s. Primarily, they serve to show us the origins of Papa Emeritus III. You could infer the theme of these videos to show that a man who no longer needed God sacrificed himself in a ritual of salvation to raise Papa. There is much to say about symbolism in both videos. Masonic, satanic, and symbols of the occult are everywhere. Perhaps this is a tale for another time. Rats. While not taking direct influence from 70s filmography, instead does have roots in 80s B horrors, culminating with a prime example similar to Michael Jackson's Thriller. A grey, washed out picture sharing derelict buildings, a deep fog, flashy dress, and hypnotic dance moves. The last three videos all share a similar trope and are rooted in the late 1960s. Year Zero, Dance Macabre, and Kiss the Go-Goat all start in black and white, only to show colour halfway through the video. During the 60s across the USA, colour television was being phased in. This is clearly a deliberate choice and a marker of the time period. Dance Macabre goes one step further, showing the conversion of Papa Neil and ends the video with the title card, The Beginning. The next video release, Kiss the Go-Goat, then shows Papa Neil performing with the Nameless Ghouls, and the video clearly informs the audience that this event took place in 1969. During Chapter 8 of the New Blood series, a present-day Papa Neil mentions to the Sister Imperator, "What do you think of a re-release for the 50th anniversary?" illustrating to the audience that the band Ghost had been present in some capacity throughout the past 50 years, and possibly much longer. One commentator from GuitarWorld.com even goes as far to point out that, aesthetically speaking for Ghost BC, the world hasn't changed much since the late 60s and early 70s. The clergy would seem to work like any church. We, the audience, as parishioners in the stalls. The soulless ghouls in the wings of the transept, and our papal frontman as head of the church at the altar. His right-hand lady is a Sister Imperator. While called sister and essentially a nun-analog, it would appear she runs much of the church and undermines Papa Neil's decisions, such as appointing Cardinal Copia as the new frontman for the band pre-prequel, murdering the past 3 papas, giving sermons to the ghouls, and scolding Papa Neil when he released 7 inches of Satanic Panic. During Chapter 5 of the New Blood series, Sister Imperator answers a call from someone referring to himself as the Old One, a predecessor to Papa Neil, perhaps, who was running the show before him. This author has read some historic texts, suggesting that a Lemmy of Motorhead was at one point part of the congregation. However, this would seem most unlikely. A depiction of the horned god appears during the dancing rituals of Dance Macabre, when Neil was baptized. It appears again being praised in the song Kiss the Go-Goat. During the Middle Ages, accused witches' testimony suggests the Satan would take the form of a goat. Throughout the latter half of the 20th century, the horned god, also formed as a goat, was worshipped in the Church of Satan. The lyrics within the song's chorus conclude with Osculium Obscenium, translating into obscene kiss, the name of a witch's supposed ritual greeting upon meeting with the devil. It involved kissing the devil's anus, and according to folklore, it was the kiss that allowed the devil to seduce women. This was depicted in Margaret Murray's book The Witch Cult in Western Europe. Could this figure be the Satan? Possibly, however obvious it may seem. It's worth noting the Old One is not a title associated with the Satan. It is, however, a term associated with H.P. Lovecraft's The Great Old Ones, and ties up nicely to Tobias Forge and the Necronomicon. When a ghoul was asked in an interview, "Do you believe in the devil?" they responded, "The most important thing is that the devil believes in us." There is a blasphemous aura that surrounds what we do. We want our audience to step into our black bubble, into something else, something beyond. Whether they are a shadowy underground clergy who have moved through shadows since the dawn of time, moving without eyes in an attempt at converting the populace to the faith of the Old One, or nothing more than a rebellious Satanist Freemason from Sweden, who wished revenge on those who had scorned him, summoning a demonic force in his aid, and thereby creating the very music that influenced him in the first place. No matter which way you look at it, it is the author's belief that there is more to Ghost than meets the eye.